So our confidence workshops are continuing. So we have, several more before we end. So May 1st is the last one. So we have a whole month of April and then May 1st. And for those of you who are here new, these do not build on each other, meaning we might reference them for a little bit. We might talk a little bit about a past one, but most of them you can just attend over and over again. So you might miss one and you can attend the next one and not feel like you're starting from scratch. And I purposely set it up that way because a lot of us are super busy, and so we can't always come. And I didn't want anybody to feel like, oh, I can't go to all of them. I'm not going to come to any of them. So I always wanted to think about, okay, how can I make this so more women can attend? So that's kind of the purpose. So this one, stop the spiral, shift the way you speak to yourself. And again, all of these are areas of building confidence. And last week, overcoming self-doubt plays really well into this because you have these doubts, but that also feeds the negative self-talk that we're going to be covering in this workshop series. And so it's something that I am working on all the time. And just because I feel confident one week doesn't mean I don't feel a lot of lack of confidence the next week. So I share that because I don't want anybody to feel like, oh, I've got it all, because I certainly don't. And I would love it if you would share the workshop series with your friends and family, anybody who you know could benefit. And we are trying to have these recorded, but the main purpose of having them in person is so that you can be with other women and socialize and talk to others that are in the same place. And men can come too, as we have here. So anybody can benefit, but I'm focused primarily on mothers. I'll just give a quick intro for those of you who haven't been here before. I became a single mom about 10 years ago, and when my husband filed for divorce, we had been married 25 years almost, and it was like starting from scratch, and it was scary and it was hard, and all of a sudden I had to provide for our kids. My husband at the time wasn't working, and so there wasn't any income coming in, and so I had to return to the workforce. And I remember feeling like I had no confidence. It was so scary, and I didn't think anybody would hire me. And so my purpose for starting Elavare and doing these workshops is to help other women rediscover themselves, build confidence, and do whatever it is that you want to do. So in these workshops, it's not specifically to return to the workforce, but we talk about it a lot. It's also just generally talking about self-confidence. And I mentioned this in the first one, that when I did some research, I had a team of BYU students that did some research, and then we interviewed over 100 mothers, and some of them had returned to the workforce and some of them were thinking about going back into the workforce. And like 83%, 85% of them all lacked confidence. That was something they all selected, like, I don't have any confidence. And so I thought, okay, if women who are already working, have jobs, lack confidence, there's something to that. So I figured we would start all over again to try to build confidence before I would start helping more women return to the workforce. But I still do that, and that's really my passion. And I just feel a real sense of connection to women who are struggling and trying to find themselves all over again, because that's exactly where I was 10 years ago. So this particular session is, talking about negative self-talk, and I thought I would just check in with myself this morning and keep track of all the negative self-talk that I did. So I'm getting myself ready, and I'm like, oh man, why, Heather, why didn't you put out your clothes ahead of time? And you're running late. And then I'm, getting my shoes on, my shoes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to get my nails done. And so my toenails look terrible. Like, why didn't you plan ahead? Like, I was talking negative to myself the entire morning. And of course this didn't go right because, Heather, you didn't plan, and you keep doing this. And it was just all this negative self-talk. And so I struggle with this. And then I'm getting in my car and I'm driving here, and I am not paying attention to how fast I'm going. But I know that I'm probably speeding a little bit, and there's a cop, and I'm like, and again, the negative self-talk. Heather, if you had planned ahead of time and you had left on time, you wouldn't get pulled over by this cop that you are going to get pulled over because you're going almost 10 miles over the speed limit. And so I fully prepared to be pulled over, because every time that I've been pulled over, except for twice, I've always gotten a ticket. I mean, I literally was on my way to my last checkup to have my baby, and so huge and pregnant, and the officer still gave me a ticket. I was running late to my appointment. And so I always get tickets. So I was just like, Heather, you're going to get a ticket. It's your fault. What you should have planned. So I talk negatively to myself all the time. But what I'm trying to do a better job of is to stop it when it's in the midst of my mind. So as soon as those thoughts start to come, I immediately try to think of something else. Now, I have a friend who does a really great job of overcoming self-talk, negative self-talk. And I'm going to share one of his examples. But I wanted to first of all lay the groundwork that negative self-talk is just it's just the reality. It's just what we do. And I looked up a definition of self-talk, and it says the inner dialogue that criticizes, doubts, and discourages. And once you have a negative thought, it gets much more difficult to overcome it. Like it's just in your mind, and then it continues to pop up to the top of your mind every now and then. There was a social psychologist that gave a TED talk, and it was a really fascinating TED talk about negative self-talk and negativity. And she shared that she was very curious about, okay, if you have this negative thought, how easy is it to do a reset? How easy is it to go from thinking negatively to positively? And so they did a bunch of experiments. And one of the experiments they did was they had two different groups of people. And in these two groups of people, they talked to them, they give them a glass, like a, half full, half empty kind of thing. They talked to them as in terms of half full, meaning a loss, and then, or half full, meaning a gain, and then half empty as a loss. And they tried to see, like, what does it look like when they switch? And so they did that as like a foundation, and then they decided to tell them that there was a procedure that 70% of the time was successful. And this one, group one was told that, and they were all like, "Oh, that's a great procedure." They felt very positive about it. And then they had the other group, which is the group two, were told it had a 30% success rate. And all of a sudden they were like, "Oh, that's not a very good procedure," or excuse me, 30%, sorry, 30%, yeah, success rate. So they were like, "Okay, that's not a very good procedure. That must not, that's not something that I would want to do." And so then they took the same group and they told the group one, they said, "Okay, it actually has a 30% failure rate. Like it's not that great." And then those ones that had originally been told it was a 70% success rate, they were all like, "Oh, it's not that good." And then the ones that had been told that it was a 30% failure rate, but then they told them it's a 70% success rate, they still thought negatively because they were still focused on that 30% of failure. And they did the same thing with a group of individuals also around another person that was running for public office. And same thing happened. The group that was thinking positively, once they told them about something negative, they thought negatively. And the group that thought negative from the start, but then told them something positive, they still thought negatively. And so she thought, this is really fascinating. It tells me that it's much harder to start from a place of negativity to get into a positive place. And that's why I think it's so hard, why we continue to think negative things in our minds over and over again, because we're already there. We're already comparing ourselves to other people and thinking we're not as good as them. We certainly can't do what they've done because they're so much more successful than we are. And so we need to get this negative self-talk out of our head, but it's just there. It's just part of life. So I wanted to ask you guys and see if we can get some participation. We won't have mics, so I'll try to remember to repeat your comment. But when was the last time your inner voice made you think small or made you feel small? Like, when did you last think to yourself, "Oh, I can't do it"? Was it on the way to this workshop? Was it earlier today? Was it yesterday? I'm curious if any of you want to share. And sometimes this negative self-talk comes even when we're doing our very best and we still put ourselves down. Anybody want to be brave enough to offer a comment? Lorraine? Okay. So on the way here, but you caught yourself and you thought, "Okay, I know I'm here to overcome this negative self-talk." Yeah. Yeah, you're doing a lot for your job search. You're doing all the things. Right. 100%. Whatever we do that is positive, we always think we could have done more, we should have done something better, or we think there's some other things that are holding us back, and we don't realize all the progress that we're making as we're going on the journey, and we don't give ourselves any credit for that. And this is just normal. Anybody else? Okay, so these are some of the negative thoughts that I have had in my, you know, motherhood. So these are some examples. So have you ever thought, I'm not doing enough for my kids anymore? So my kids are older now and they tend to be more independent, but I tell myself all the time, I'm not doing enough. And I also compare myself to other women who also have children, my children's same age. So I think, well, they're doing it. They're doing all the great things. I'm just not. And then that's where my head goes into other spirals, right? I missed too many moments when they were younger. That's why we're not as close. I I was busy because there, I went back into the workforce when my youngest was 9 and my oldest was 18. And I think, oh, well, of course I don't have the relationship that I want with some of them because I missed too many of those moments when I missed the school play because it was during my work hours or whatever it was. Number 3, I'm a bad mom because I lose patience or snap at them. I wish I was more patient. And again, I compare myself to the other women in my neighborhood, in my circles, at the school, where I'm watching one of them observe their child. I remember one of my kids was just very absent-minded, I guess. And my child went to school. Uh, there were always things, she was always forgetting things, basically. And I thought to myself, here I'm dropping off I'm not dropping off my kids and they're telling me the things that they missed and they forgot. And I'm seeing other kids go into the school with their backpack and their lunches and they obviously remembered all those things. And yet I have a child that's still struggling. And one day I was working, so I didn't have the flexibility of being able to go back to the school later. And I went to drop off my daughter and she didn't have shoes on. And she was in 5th grade. I'm not talking a kindergartner or toddler. She didn't have shoes on. She gets out of the car, and that's when she realized that she didn't have her shoes on. And I said, and she goes, Mom, I don't have my shoes. We got to go back to the house to get my shoes. I'm like, I can't. I've got to go to work. Like, I can't. And this was kind of early on when well, anyway, it was early on, and I just thought to myself, okay, what do I do? Do I go into work late? Do I run back home? And it's like, no, this has got to stop. Keeps going on and on. I've got to, no, I'm just going to tell her that she can either wear my shoes, and my shoes were bigger than her feet, obviously, or she can go in without shoes. And she had socks on. And I gave her those 2 choices. I said, these are the 2 choices you have. And she looked at her feet and looked back up at me and looked at my shoes. I'll just go without shoes. So she went into the school without shoes. And then, of course, I drive away and I'm embarrassed and I'm like, oh my gosh, her teacher's going to think I'm the worst mom ever. So again, all this negative self-talk. And I'm going, why did I do that? I should have just gone back home and I should have just called work and told them I'd be late. No, I needed to just go and do. And, but of course, then I'm a bad mom. I should have been paying attention when she got into the car. I should have been observant, and that's my fault. No, it wasn't my fault. It was my child's fault. But of course, I took it on as if it was my fault. Number 4, other moms seem to have closer relationships with their teens, and this kind of goes with number 1. When my teens wouldn't come and talk to me, and I would talk to one of my girlfriends, and she would say, "I just had the best conversation with, Thomas or whoever it was." And we stayed up late talking, and it was just so great. And I'm like, oh, I wish I had that. I wish I had that relationship with my teen, and I don't. But instead of thinking to myself positively but we do other things. My son doesn't necessarily stay up and talk to me, but we do other fun things together. We play pickleball or we do other stuff. I didn't go there. That's not where my mind went. My mind instead went, it's just I'm a bad mom, and we don't have a good relationship because of things that I've done wrong. Number 5, I should have handled things differently when they were younger, and it could be fill in the blank, anything. I should have handled whatever differently. So here's something where my negative self-talk goes: piano lessons. So when my kids when they were younger, they all did piano. And the rule at our house was they all had to do piano, and then they could do something else. So they could do piano and football, they could do piano and guitar, they could do piano and chorus, whatever it is. They had to do piano though. And because my theory was piano would teach them discipline, it would help them with other areas of their brain, and I felt like that was something important. And so they had to practice the piano every day except for Saturday and Sunday before they could do anything else. And I was having lots of negative self-talk when my kids got older, because like one of my daughters was like, yeah, Mom, you caused me a lot of trauma. Piano was, and I hate the piano now. I don't even want to look at it. And so I was feeling bad about myself. Again, this negative self-talk, until my oldest was on his church mission, and he mentioned how practicing the piano was such a blessing to him, because he was able to practice it when he had his companion that he was working with didn't want to work, and so he would just go to the church and play the piano. And he says, "I'm so glad you made me do the piano." And so I was like, "Oh," patted myself on the back, But at the time, all I could think of was, my daughter hates the piano. I ruined her. No wonder she doesn't want to stay up late talking to me or whatever. Again, it's a spiral, and I start to think negatively. But it could be anything. You could have handled so many things differently. Or sometimes you might think, oh, well, Nicole would never have lost her temper. Nicole would have just done it so much better than me. And but we can't compare ourselves to other moms, even though that's what we do all the time, right? Number 6, I failed at keeping a peaceful, connected home. I don't know how many times I thought, I just want to have a peaceful home. I just want it to be, everybody's happy, everybody's cooperative, everybody loves to be with each other. And so when my kids were young, I really told myself, again, the reason why they aren't closer, or the reason why they're fighting or whatever, is because of my fault. Like I'm not a great person, and I'm not, all these things. But now that my kids are older, they are close. They have a great relationship. Everything's really, really good. So I tell you this because this negative self-talk is not doing you any favors. And it didn't do me any favors, and it just caused me a lot of grief. But these are just some of the examples, and I'm sure you all have your own examples, but these are kind of the things that come to my mind. So when we have these thoughts, we need to shift them. I love this quote by Joyce Meyer. She's an American author, and she says, "We talk to ourselves more than anyone else. Make sure you're saying the right things." When I talk to myself, I say the wrong things oftentimes. But because I've been trying to help myself overcome this negative self-talk, I'm able to catch myself much more quickly. And it takes a lot of time to be very conscientious of that. And because I think subconsciously, we're always just thinking, our minds are just going off on autopilot. And so we're not paying attention. But of course, we're alone with our thoughts and ourselves all the time. And we're the ones that should be telling ourselves, "You've got this, you're so great." But we oftentimes don't. And the other thing that is hilarious to me, or sad, is I don't know about you guys, but I was always telling my kids, "You've got this, you're so great, you're so smart and hardworking, and I love how much thought you put into this essay. And wow, your room is so clean. Thank you so much for, oh, you vacuumed really, really great there. I can tell, like, the lines are so straight," whatever it is. I was always super complimentary to them because I wanted them to be built up. I didn't want them to have negative thoughts. I wanted them to think they could do anything. And so here I am talking negative to myself, but yet praising my kids. And so I'm not sure why there's that disconnect for us, that we can tell other people outwardly, even if we have a job, we're oftentimes great at encouraging our colleagues or people that work for us. You're doing awesome. And but when it comes to ourselves, we're doing terrible at it. So something else that I just wanted to also say is that your negative self-talk is not a reflection of reality. Those are just thoughts. They aren't facts. Now, yes, sometimes they are facts, but the negativity that comes with that is, again, just a thought. So, for example, when I was driving and I was afraid I was going to get pulled over by the police car, and I was kind of negative about myself, Heather, you shouldn't have been speeding. That is a fact. I was speeding, but instead I kept into that negative, thought process until I passed the cop and I got over my emotions, and I started to then think to myself, well, at least you are going to be on time for the event. You're at least you didn't get pulled over. Like, I started to think of the positive things, but I did dwell on the negative a little bit too long. um, Negative self-talk also feeds guilt and stress and shame, and those are all places that we don't want to be in, but we oftentimes go there. Again, it just feels natural, and it's where our headspace goes. um, it also prevents us from being able to enjoy the small moments, and keeps us from remembering all those great memories and the small things, because we dwell on the negative things because they feel bigger even if they aren't actually bigger. And it also can lead to burnout, from self-imposed expectations, because you think to yourself, well, I should be doing better, I should be doing more, I'm not enough. So how do we break through this cycle of negative self-talk? And like I said, I'm working on it too. I'm not a master at this, and I think that if you get anything from this workshop series, it's that it's confidence is always going up and down, and it's not a constant where you can always remain positive. I don't know anybody that's always just super confident, even people who are really successful. And I know that's a fact. And so, but we need to always be thinking about different things that we can do to break through this negative self-talk. So one of the things that is, again, a struggle for me, but I'm working on it, is thinking about some of the solutions when we have these negative self-talk statements. So for example, I'm not doing enough for my kids anymore. What would be a way to be able to change that negative self-talk? I have a thought, but I'm curious, what is something that you would say if you have that negative self-talk of, I'm not doing enough for my kids anymore? Oh, I love it. What is enough? Yeah, asking yourself. Yes, yes. And we're there's that song in The Greatest Showman, never enough, never, never. Like, I think we oftentimes think we're never enough. But exactly, what does enough mean? Enough is not this endless abundance of all of these things that you think you should be able to accomplish and do. It's again just something in our thoughts. Yes. Maybe your kids don't want more. That is the truth. So many of your kids, especially as they get older, they really don't want you to be mothering them and like helicopter parenting all over them. Yes, I love. Yes, exactly. All right, another one. I miss too many moments when they were younger. How could you switch that around? And maybe you didn't miss any of those moments. So maybe it's not something that you are struggling with, but it is something that I think, oh, I could have done more. Did you? Thank you. Yes, if you make a list of all the things you did make it to, you'll realize you were there more than you realize. 100%. I remember there was one time I had heard from somebody like, I didn't miss my son's soccer game his whole entire life. And so then I was like, I wish I could say that. But you know what? I was there when it mattered. Like, I was at the important times, like, right? Like the important championship game, or the important, time when it was like really snowy and bad weather, and I was able to have the right hot chocolate and all the, comforts of the, of warmth, and giving them the warm clothes. So, you know, oh, yes, or when they're at the hospital injured from a game. Thank you. Okay. And that's something else too. My son got injured with soccer, and there were lots of hospital moments and surgery, and yeah, yeah. Right, you took all the photos. You went to all the important other, right. I love that. Yeah, go back through the photos. Go, if you don't have them in a photo album, just go and find the photos. You'll see proof of all of the times where you were at those important games or those important plays or the moments for your children. And I'm a big proponent of journaling and going back and rereading and reminding yourself of all of the really great things you have been doing all along. I love that. Um, another comment is, why is this phase so hard? Why is this, part of motherhood or whatever happens to be? I should have figured it out by now. But if you can rephrase it of like, I'm still learning, I'm still figuring this out. And guess what? All the other mothers are too, right? We are not in this alone. We are in this together. But we do a lot of comparison, or at least I have done a lot of comparison, thinking, well, other people have it all figured out. They've got it, they're doing such a better job than I am. And again, it's just in our mind. It's just these thoughts that we continue to have. And we have to get over these thoughts. So, something that my friend, I was telling you, he's a coach, like a life coach, and he wrote a book about his experiences growing up and then what he also does to help himself build confidence. And he talks about framing the inner dialogue, the thoughts, as he gives it a name. And so he has named this side of him that tells him these negative things. And so something that I've done that's helpful is I will say, I'm just being a negative Nelly. And that reminds myself of, don't keep talking about this stuff, Heather. Like, don't keep thinking about this stuff. You're just being a negative Nelly. And that is a way for me to tell myself, okay, I don't want to be negative Nelly. I want to be Heather. And so I can immediately talk to myself and think, okay, negative Nelly would think these things because that's where she's always negative. Heather is a positive person. This is not who she is. And the thing that's really interesting is I can be outwardly very positive. I can look at my situation, like even when I went through my divorce and I had to go back to work, I could find the positive in anything and everything. I oftentimes think of myself as like a Pollyanna, like I do tend to focus on the positive. But when it has to do with myself, things that I should be able to control, I have a much harder time staying positive. So this negative Nelly is in my mind telling me all these things that isn't serving me well at all. And so naming your inner critic is going to really help you, because then you can separate yourself from that person giving you these negative thoughts and recognizing that that's not your true self. And that's something that I continue to work on. And again, I'm a work in progress. I love some of these actions that I came across, and some of these I'm really good at, and some of these I'm terrible at. But we're all here to get better and improve. So first of all, challenging the thought. So asking yourself, is this really true? And asking yourself over and over again until you can get to a place of feeling like, okay, is this true? Is this helpful? Would I say this to a friend? Like, that's what also helps me, is like, would I say this to a friend? And you can, reframe it, and then you can go from being negative about yourself to something positive. We're so hard on ourselves, and yet we would never say to somebody else the things that we tell ourselves. Yeah. Okay, so no, I do remember reading somewhere too that you have to have a certain amount of, whether it's 5 positive thoughts or whatever, to then counteract the negative. I've heard that same concept, that's why we have to really try to not get into those negative spirals, because it takes so much longer to get out of that, because all the positive thoughts that we have to think to be able to counteract it. The next believable thought. So you go from, challenging thought to the next believable thought. So sometimes you can just start with something small, but it's believable. So for example, instead of saying I failed as a mom, say I did the best I could with what I knew. And I don't know about you guys, but as a parent, whether you're a dad or a mother, like, there's no handbook. There's nothing, like, there's plenty of books out there, but there's no manual for your child or children. Like every child is different. And I know this because I have 5 kids, and the first is completely different from the last, even though they're both boys. And how I parented my first child, I didn't parent my last child that same way at all. And so giving yourself a believable thought, you did the best, and you're continuing to do the best with what you know. You don't know everything. So give yourself some grace that, of course, you're not going to be perfect, and realize that it's progress. And I can't wait for my kids to have their own kids so that they can realize how hard it was to be a mom to them. It's been a joy and a blessing, but also sometimes very challenging. Practice self-compassion. Okay, you guys, this is not what I'm very good at. I'm just gonna admit it. And so, speaking to yourself as if it was your 5-year-old self. Okay, so instead of telling myself some of the negative things, like how would you have talked to yourself if you were a 5-year-old kid? Because I promise you, we would not talk to our 5-year-old self the way that we talk to ourselves as our adult self. And just you would be coaxing, you would be gentle, you would be encouraging, you would say all the things that would make that child feel like there's hope and possibility, instead of when we tell ourselves, up, you blew it, you already blew it, no wonder that you're where you are because you didn't do XYZ, so of course you don't deserve better because you blew it. No, we would have been just like, it's okay, you're doing so great, keep up the good work, you know, try again. Like I can't tell how many times I would tell my kids, sure, you didn't do it right this first time, but you're going to try it again, you're going to do great the next time. But do I tell myself that? Not very well. But again, I learn from these workshops just as much as you guys do, or I hope you guys do. So practicing self-compassion is something that I am going to continue to work at. So I have some list of different thoughts that might be going on in your head, and so these are some kind of if-then statements, or some statements to help you strategize about what you're going to say and do in the future. So, for example, instead of saying "I give up," you can say, "I'm going to try a different strategy. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to see if that works." Another one is, "This is too difficult." And again, it may be sounding like you're talking to a little child, right? "This is too difficult." And all you need to do is tell yourself this is going to take some time and effort, right? "I'll never finish." Instead of saying "I'll never finish," say, "Each step I take, I move forward. I'm progressing." Okay? "I'm not good at this. With time, I will get better." "I'll never be smart." And then you could say to yourself, "I can learn anything I want, and I can learn to do anything I want." "I can't do this." And then you're going to tell yourself, "I'm going to learn how to do this." "I made a mistake." Instead of saying that, you're going to say, "I can learn from my mistakes." "It's not good enough." You could say, "Am I putting in my best work?" "They are better than me." Instead of saying, "What can I learn from them?" I love this one especially because, man, all of the people that surround us who we think are better than us, I think that they will tell us that they're struggling too and they're figuring it out. And B, I think that they'd be more than happy to share their strategies and what works for them. So, for example, if you're feeling like, oh, our morning routine going, getting all the kids off to school, doing whatever stuff isn't working, I'm always impatient, I'm yelling at them, "Get in the car, we got to go, you're going to miss the bus," whatever it happens to be. We can be saying to our friends who seem to be doing it all right, we can say, "Hey, you guys are always early. What do you guys do? How do you get early? How come you're always early to church? Or what do you do?" And get some ideas, because it'll boost their confidence, because I guarantee they are not as perfect as you think that they are on the outside. And B, that they're going to have some good ideas to share. And so feel free to ask other moms that seem to be doing it all perfect, but they probably aren't. And then lastly, "I'm a failure." And instead of saying "I'm a failure," what can I learn from this? And I have definitely had some failures, some more significant than others. And what always I can take something away from the failure. And it's the remembering of what I need to do next time that sometimes is tricky, but I oftentimes can remind myself, okay, I did fail at this, but at least I tried, right? That's the positive part of it. It's like, you don't ever try, then you're never going to fail. Yeah, that's great, but then you're never going to make any progress. You're never going to actually accomplish your dreams or do the things that are hard, because you're going to keep yourself in the safe zone because it feels very comfortable. Self-compassion again is self-compassion again is something that I'm not very good at. And Brene Brown said, and I love this quote, I didn't put it up here, but she said, talk to yourself like someone you love. And we should love ourselves. And oftentimes I'm not, talking to myself like I love myself. Number 4, set realistic expectations. This, I think, is very powerful. I don't know about you guys, but I think I set far too unrealistic expectations, and that's where I really get in trouble. Growth is a process. Just like parenting is a process, your growth, your struggles that you're going to have over and over again, it is going to get better over time. You're going to have some setbacks, but over time it's going to get better as you go. And you need to set these expectations that are willing to give yourself some grace and some chances to fail and make mistakes. Because sometimes I think, again, we're comparing ourselves to other people. There was a woman when I lived in New York City, and she had a nanny and she had a housekeeper, and she was just always amazing and dressed amazingly, and I just was so envious. And I was like, why can't I do this? Because I didn't have a housekeeper and I didn't have a nanny. Of course, I wasn't able to do some of these things. But I had set these expectations that I should be able to do those things also, not realizing that she had a lot of help that I didn't have. And so give yourself a chance to be imperfect and enjoy the process, and realize that you're going to make forward momentum just by being willing to be in it. Like giving yourself the chance to make mistakes and realize you're going to learn from them, and it's going to get better over time. Number 5, create time for self-care. Of all of these, I'm the worst at creating time for self-care. Being at this workshop is self-care because you're giving yourself time to improve yourself and build on yourself, right? And whenever there would be something, I would always just tell myself, okay, well, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's in my mind. I thought I didn't deserve it or whatever. I mean, my toenails are proof that I am the worst at self-care. I've gotten my fingernails done probably once. Excuse me, I shouldn't say once. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've gotten my fingernails done. My toenails I've done a better job of, but it's only because my 2 big toes split in the middle, so that if I don't get my toenails done, they crack, and it's very painful. So I have to get my toenails done. But if I didn't, do you think I'd be getting my toenails done? No, because I'm terrible. So I did a podcast recording last night, and one of my questions I always ask my guests is, what's a guilty pleasure that you do that helps you relieve stress and just makes you feel better? And she said, I take a bath every night, like without fail. I said, I was just incredulous, like every night you take a hot bath? She goes, yes, every night. I was like, oh man, you are so good. Again, I have a nice deep tub, and I have probably taken 4 baths in that tub. And I need to do better. So again, I'm doing this workshop and I'm learning as I'm doing this too. I need to do more, self-care. And why is that? Because if we take care of ourselves and we give ourselves nurturing things to feel good about ourselves, it helps boost our confidence and helps us again get out of that negative self-talk. Because sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, everybody else in the family is more important, and then we don't ever take care of ourselves. We're the very last. And remind me, did I share the story about my mother and sweaters for Christmas? Did I tell you that story? Okay, I'm going to share that story. So, Mom, apologies. So one year for Christmas, we always had family Christmas pictures taken. And one year my dad took all of the family pictures that we had done and put them in a matted frame. And in this frame, you could see all the family pictures, and I was looking at them. And 5 of them, my mom was wearing the exact same sweater in all 5. And I was in my 20s at this point, and I asked her, Mom, why did you wear the same sweater in 5 family pictures? Like, that seems crazy. Like, why didn't you wear something new and get something nice? And she goes, because it was more important that you have a new outfit than I. And we didn't have, we didn't have a lot of money. So she says, it was more important you had a new outfit than I did. And I was like, oh my gosh. And in that case, like we didn't have the money to be able to buy, all these fancy clothes and stuff. But again, mothers are always sacrificing them for themselves. And they're not very good at doing self-care because it's like, well, I've got to do this for so-and-so. And we're just an afterthought. So when we give ourselves self-care, then we actually improve we overcome our negative self-talk, because then we stop thinking that we don't deserve it. All right, some additional strategies that I found that I had, that I also have my list, but we've talked about some of these before. Positive affirmations in the mirror. Like I said, these do work. Sounds hokey. It sounds like they don't work, but I promise when I've been at my last resort and I have no confidence, I do these positive affirmations and they've made all the difference in the world. And again, those are like present statements. I am capable, I am smart, I am, those statements that say maybe what you don't feel like, but you make those statements and you remind yourself and you say them in the mirror with feeling. Be intentional about what enters your headspace. I'm trying to be much better about that. And something that really helps me, especially when I'm on drives, because that's when my mind just starts to spiral about things, is I'll listen to a podcast or a book, an audio book. And that makes all the difference, because again, I'm listening to positive people talking about things that they're doing in their life, and they're making progress, and it helps me think, okay, I can do this, I can do better. Cut out sources that create shame or comparison. So I used to have a friend that was really, really great, and I was always comparing myself to her. It wasn't very good, it wasn't healthy, but we were the same age, our kids were in similar, ages, and I just was like, oh man, she is able to do it all, I'm not, and I finally had to stop being friends with her because it wasn't doing me any good. And if I had been a stronger person, I would have just been able to push through it. And it's okay, you're great too, Heather. But I just couldn't. And so I had to remove myself and I would make excuses for get-togethers and things like that because I just couldn't be with her anymore, because I had to cut that source off because I was comparing myself to her. And again, I'm in a better place now, and I could have been able to just deal with it and get that out of that negative self-talk and stuff, but I couldn't at the time. So I had to end that friendship, and it's not that I ended the friendship, because I'm still friends with her, but I just don't do things with her because I couldn't stand how much I was comparing myself. But we need to stop the things that are causing us shame too. It's a terrible cycle that we can get into, and it's just something, again, that we fall into because it feels comfortable. All right. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent. Eleanor Roosevelt. And I heard this quote a long time ago, and I came across it just recently. And I remember thinking, oh, I love this quote, because it's ourselves that is allowing this negative self-talk, right? We are telling ourselves we're perfectly good with, telling ourselves how inferior we are. And that's so wrong and so bad. But nobody can make you feel that way. Just you. You are the one that has that control. And we don't always give ourselves the grace of realizing, okay, I can stop that thought. I can get over that. And these negative self-thought, these negative self-talk, these thoughts that are going in our minds keep us from doing the big, hard things. And oftentimes when these thoughts come into our heads are when we're in a situation to grow, like whether it's returning to the workforce or finding a new hobby that you want to do that's scary, you have never done before, or whether you're going to start a business, whatever it happens to be. That's when those negative self-talk thoughts come into your head really quickly and fast. But you are the one that can control that. All right, I always try to have these key takeaways at the end so that we can think about what we've been talking about and discussing and help you remember. So your thoughts are not facts. And we talked this a little bit about self-doubt also. And these are just, again, these things are just in your head, and you can switch them off pretty quickly, but it's hard to keep them from coming in. So just realize that those are not facts. Self-compassion is more powerful than self-criticism. Love yourself and give yourself grace and time to make mistakes and be imperfect, and realize that all of us are imperfect, and just give yourself more of that self-compassion. You can parent from peace, not pressure. And that again speaks to where you are trying to be a good parent. Just have that peaceful thought of that you're doing the best you can. Don't feel pressure. Don't give you are the one that's pressuring yourself, because you're comparing yourself to other people that seem to have it all. They've got it all figured out, whether they're, just being a parent or trying to do hard things, whatever it happens to be. Just realize that peace is what it is to think good thoughts and to give yourself that grace and talk to yourself in a way that gives you encouragement, the way that you would talk to your 5-year-old self. Mindset work is a skill. We didn't talk about this very much in this time, and we'll probably talk about it in another session, but I've started doing meditation because I found that it's really helpful to get me back into focus, like focus again on not all these thoughts that are heading, going spinning in my head. And so when we get these negative self-talk thoughts coming in, it's a skill to get them out again. Either, talking about them as negative Nelly, or quicking, coming up with a code word or something that can help you switch that off, or listening to a song that's going to give you that positive feeling again. Whatever it takes is what I recommend. This is my family now, and I didn't share it in the other sessions, but I thought to myself, oh, maybe you'd want to see what my little kids look like now. And I have a son-in-law who's in the center. And I share this because, growing up, I thought I was messing them up for life. They were going to be in jail, pregnant, on drugs, like all these things. Like I couldn't help but think I was ruining my kids because of things that I was doing. And they're all great kids and doing good things. And I'm really proud of them. And I share that because it's not over. It's not over. And even when your kids are adults and they're making bad choices, it's not over. And just recognize too that so many of the things are out of your control. And don't beat yourself up. You're just doing the best you can. But once you can get over these negative thoughts, you're going to build confidence. And the negative thoughts are keeping you from feeling more confident about yourself. And once we can start, curbing those negative thoughts, and I encourage all of you guys after this, one of your actions, because I give you a checklist after each of these workshops. One of them is going to be, catching yourself in your negative thoughts and keeping track of them. And not just negative thoughts, something else, not just negative self-talk, but just negativity. So when you have concerns about things, or you're weighed down by things that you certainly don't have control over, also keep track of that and try to switch your mindset around that too, because that can get us into negative spirals as well. And lastly, you are stronger than you think. And I always love sharing this slide because a lot of us are feeling like we can't do it. We're not enough. We're so far behind somebody else that's, so much more successful than we are, or have it all figured out, or they have the job and they seem to have the career and the company and the whatever they're doing. And we are comparing ourselves to the wrong people. We should only be comparing ourselves to ourselves, because the progress that we make every day, day in, day out, is what's going to count. And as long as we're making progress instead of focus on perfection, that's what really matters. And the QR code there is just, if you don't know anything about Elavare and you're trying to get back into the workforce, that's what I really love doing. So I love helping women build confidence and also help them return to the workforce, or enter for the first time if they've never been in it.